For the first time in, wow, a couple of years, I am relatively disappointed and disillusioned with artificial intelligence. I am normally extremely optimistic. I find most of the new things that are coming out very exciting for the future. I am, in general, a very positive person about artificial intelligence, but the last couple of weeks have been rough, extremely rough. I think we are entering a period in AI where the music is coming to a close and we are potentially being kicked out. And by we, I mean the normal people, the people who can't necessarily afford to pay the top price, the people who are not on a certain list that has been drawn up by a government, and potentially the people who are outside the United States of America. We are entering a dark ages in artificial intelligence unless something can change. What has just happened and what's making me a little bit upset about the whole thing is we had Fable, got banned a couple of weeks ago, and we have just heard that GPT 5.6, the new model from OpenAI, has not been banned, but it is going to be very limited in its release. This is all very much still being worked out, so I'm going to give you the context so you can start to draw your own conclusions. So you'll see a lot of people saying that GPT 5.6 has been banned. That is not the case. It does exist. It's just that you and I cannot use it, which in a way is even more annoying. So over the last couple of weeks, we have had multiple AI lockdowns. First, we had Claude, Mythos and Fable being cut. Basically, we got it for a few days, realized, wow, this is really good. And then it was removed from access because the US government requested it. It was too powerful. It should not have been out there in the world. Some of the blame has to be put on Dario Amodei, the head of Anthropic, the creators of Claude, for going around telling everyone that this is a super weapon and it really shouldn't be allowed out, which is a very weird thing to do when it is your product. He used fear-based mongering and people took him at his word and removed these models from the market. Now, over the last couple of weeks, ChatGPT from OpenAI has been delayed. We haven't actually had a ChatGPT model in 2 months since GPT 5.5. So a lot of people are wondering, well, where is it? The reason is this: because of Fable getting pulled off the market, OpenAI, quite rightly, were sitting in their boardrooms thinking, shit, how do we deal with this? Should we be putting a model out into this market right now, considering what is happening to Anthropic? And the answer seems to be no. Instead, they are sending their model over to the US government first and foremost to get vetted, to get tested, and then it's going to be released to certain partners. I'll show you the exact details, but I think the bigger implications of this are very, very worrying. So, GPT 5.6, I'll show you what it actually is. We have 3 main models. I'm going to pull up the tweet. Introducing a limited preview of GPT 5.6 Sol, Sun, our next generation frontier model, as well as GPT 5.6 Terra, a balanced model for efficient everyday work, and GPT 5.6 Luna, a fast and affordable model for high volume work. So this is the new model family: Sol, Terra, Luna, the sun, earth, and the moon. OpenAI have actually changed the branding of their main Twitter page to represent the new models that are coming out. Actually, it's a ChatGPT Twitter page. They are really leaning into this new branding, talking about these new models, and for what we can tell, they look like very advanced, very good models. We'll have a look at the capabilities in a moment, but we can't access them. We are not allowed to use these models. In fact, nobody really has their hands on these right now. So they've introduced this and immediately said, we believe in broad access and plan to make GPT 5.6, Sol, Terra, and Luna generally available in the coming weeks. For now, at the request of the US government, we're starting with a limited preview amongst a small number of trusted partners in Codex and the AP. So we're not getting it. These are preview only, and we do not know for how long. That is what is important here, not the actual models. It doesn't matter if it's Fable, it doesn't matter if it's Mythos, Sol, Luna, Terra, whatever. What is important here is that these models are no longer coming to the public. They are being deemed too dangerous to be released to us, and instead they're being held back by and provided to companies in the United States only, as far as we know, who are on a trusted list. So the US government is basically controlling who has access to these tools. There's not going to be any ChatGPT access. There's no wait list. It's only going to be an API in Codex, so it's not coming broadly to the market, and it's only going to be going to vetted partners. This is what's worrying me. This is what's causing disillusionment. So I think that Claude, Mythos and Fable was basically a warning shot, and well deserved. If Dario, Amodei and Anthropic continue to tell people that these are incredibly dangerous and will end the world, then yeah, they're going to be taking at their word eventually. And Dario's been doing this for years and years and years and years. He's now started to do this about open source models, because open source are the alternative, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And he's having, I think, a deleterious effect on the industry as a whole. A precedent has now been set, and what we're probably going to see is every single model having to go through a vetting procedure right now. So bizarrely, it was the EU who have been trying to regulate artificial intelligence all this time, but it is the American government, the US government, who are the ones who are going to be heavily regulating it from now on. So I've seen a lot of jokes about how the Chinese are being more democratic in their model releases, whereas the Americans are being autocratic. It's a joke, but I think there is a certain amount of factity there too. So why does the government care? It's because of this. Let's pop over to the actual capabilities of the model. It's good. That shouldn't surprise anybody. Whenever we get a new model, they tend to be very good. Here is on Terminal Bench. So this is for agentic command line workflows with planning, iteration, and tool coordination. So generally long horizon, complicated tasks. On Terminal Bench 2.0, Claude Fable 5 is down here at 84.3%. Claude Mythos 5 is here at 88%. And GPT 5.6 Sol and Sol Ultra are at 88.8% and 91.9%. The actual models, Fable and Mythos, are not that important. It's the directionality that matters here. It's the fact that all the models from all the providers are going to be this kind of level very soon. And it looks like OpenAI already had a version of ChatGPT ready, locked and loaded, that they had ready to release, that they're only now putting out as the dust starts to settle on us. But remember, all of the providers will have this level in the next few months, 6 months, 12 months, does not matter. This is the level of artificial intelligence that will be generally available at some point from every single model at cost-effective price within a very short, historically speaking, amount of time. So it's going to become really difficult for the government to continue to regulate this, because they are going to be available open source. And then across the board, let's go down to, here we go, exploit bench. So the ability to hack, the ability to open up systems and exploit GIM. Again, these models are very good. This line at the top is Mythos 5, which is currently the best for opening up systems. And you can see that GPT 5.6 Sol gets very close, gets to about 75%, the same as Mythos Preview, which capped out at 74.2%. So GPT 5.6 can do basically the same thing. Also notice the number of tokens required for GPT 5.6 Sol to get to a similar level as Mythos Preview. It can do so in about 100,000 tokens rather than 350,000 tokens. So it means it's about 3.5 times more efficient. So not only is it just as good as Mythos Preview, it is more efficient at doing so, which means you can run more agents, which allows you to get into more systems. So that's a problem. This is why these models are being restricted. The governments are finally taking this seriously. And again, it is ironic that the EU has been telling everyone we need to take this seriously for the last couple of years, but it is the US government who has finally said, oh shit, we had better regulate this. So when you have access to these models and in the hands of bad actors, they could be used potentially, if jailbroken, to design weapons, biochemical weapons, chemical weapons, potentially nuclear weapons, for example. They can allow you to open up systems like banking systems, governmental systems. We've seen a number of AIs. This is basic Claude Opus, Claude Sonnet have been used to open up governmental systems in Mexico, for example. This is a very real concern, especially because the cyber capacities of a lot of governments and a lot of banks are falling behind. So I think the big word moving forward for 2026, at least probably over the next couple of years, is going to be permission. Have you been permissioned to be able to use a particular system? Increasingly, models and tools are going to exist, and we're just not going to have access to them. There is going to be a divide in the haves and the have-nots, and it's not just going to be on cost, it's going to be on who you are and where you are from. As somebody who is from the UK, I will probably not have access to these systems as quickly as somebody from the United States of America. So this is no longer just about money. I will not be able to buy my way into that as a non-US citizen, as a non-US sanctioned organization. So I will not have access to that personally. That's not just me, that's going to be globally. A lot of countries, a lot of companies, a lot of individuals are going to be cut out of this, which is a very worrying new precedent. Somebody else now owns the keys. It is not the AI companies, it is the US government. It is Donald Trump. So what do we do about this? Open weights, open source. I put together on Saturday, based off the back of visiting the Google I/O Connect conference in Berlin, I managed to talk to some of the DeepMind members. I did an interview, which I'll put out later in the week, talking to some DeepMind members and talking to them in particular about the Gemma models. These are open source models which are available for you to download onto your phone, onto your laptop, onto your computer, onto a server. I think increasingly open source is going to be very, very important, because we are not going to have control over what models we can use if a government can take them away from us at any point. So the good news is that open source models are getting good, very, very good, very, very quickly. Let's actually go over to artificial analysis and see what the best one is right now. I think it's still GLM. There we go, artificialanalysis.ai. So we're going to look at intelligence. The third smartest model right now is GLM 5.2 Max, which is a Chinese open source model. Now, this particular model is too large for you to run at home on a computer, unless your computer costs a huge amount of money, a few $100,000 at least. But this is a model that can be accessed via the cloud and belongs to a Chinese company. So it's not going to be restricted in the same way as OpenAI or Anthropic. Export controls don't work very well when you are a Chinese company. The US government doesn't have power there. So that is an option. Another option is local models. So using smaller models like the Gemma family on your local computers. They are not as good as the state-of-the-art models that we can have access to on the cloud. However, they are not that far behind. So they're around, or open source models are around 7 to 8 months behind where we are right now with the state-of-the-art. And local models are a little bit behind that. So you can use a local model right now, like a Gemma model, on a relatively low-powered computer, like a Mac Studio or a Mac Mini, something that costs you a few $1,000s rather than $200,000, $300,000, and you can still get decent quality output. Not as good as Claude, not as good as ChatGPT, but solid. And importantly, these local models are getting better and better and better. And you're able to do more and more, even on the same hardware. So a year from now, you might have a local model which is equivalent to, let's say, an Opus model from Claude. What this kind of means, and this is the exciting part, is that there's a certain point where most of us don't need that much more intelligence. For most of our everyday tasks, less smart models, so non-Sol or Fable or Mythos level models, can still do a lot of the work for us. When that happens, and when the local models are small enough for us to deploy on our local machines, we no longer need Claude, Anthropic, OpenAI, etc. That scares and should scare these large companies. So this is a clip of Dario Amodei. This was talking about open source models. And he's been talking about open source for years, basically saying it's dangerous. We shouldn't put it into the hands of people. We don't really know what it does. It's a threat to the American ecosystem, etc. He's very negative on open source models. For me, this makes me want to use open source more and more, and it makes me want to look into open source, running local models, etc., in order to circumvent all of the power being controlled by OpenAI and Anthropic, and then another level of power and control being put on top of that, which is the White House and the US government in particular. So it is 100% time to start to investigate into open source models. I put together a guide on Saturday, literally about how to get some local models set up on your computer, on your laptop, and on your mobile phone using the Gemma models, for example. Will these be able to replace Claude and OpenAI for you on a day-to-day basis? No, not yet, but that's absolutely fine. They can do a lot of heavy lifting, and they are going to get better and better. Plus, you can use them on the airplane, which is really cool. So that is the main thing that you should be doing right now. So obviously, do not depend on one model. So anyone who depended on Anthropic, if you also have backups with OpenAI, ChatGPT, fantastic, and vice versa. However, it looks like all of the American labs are now going to have to go through the US government. This is now the norm. This precedent has been set. And these models are only going to get smarter. So there's no reason to believe that this will suddenly disappear. That's the new norm, the new future, unfortunately. So you, yes, don't depend on one model, but also don't depend only on the American closed source models. You need to look at alternatives. That could be Chinese open source models. And to do something like that, you just go to somewhere like ZAI and you can sign up for a subscription and use this model much in the same way that you do with ChatGPT or with Claude. Also have a look at local models. These are ones that you download onto your computer. So they are totally disconnected from Chinese servers, if that is a concern to you. Instead, they live on your computer or on a server that you own, and therefore you have complete and utter data protection and security. These are two options that are looking extremely attractive right now, and they're definitely worth exploring. I'll talk about security, I'll talk about data privacy, I'll talk about how you can start to build them into your workflows and replace the American closed source models using Chinese models as an alternative. Because this is going to get worse before it gets better, I think. So the new question now is no longer, oh, is this model smart? All of the new models are smart. Every time a new model comes out, yeah, it's really good. It's really smart. That doesn't really matter anymore. The question now is, do I have access to it? Am I able to use it? And that could either be, can I afford it? Because some models are getting really expensive. So maybe I'm going to get priced out. It could be, does my company need to be on a vetted list? As we're seeing with the new ChatGPT 5.6 and Mythos and Fable are now being released to vetted companies. The US government gets to choose. I'm guessing your company isn't, or if you own a company, it's probably not on that list. Or do I need to be a US citizen to access this model? These are the new questions now. Not how powerful is this model, but how am I able to use this? Am I able to use this? And if the answer is no, then you need to start looking for alternatives. And I think the rest of this year, 2026, is going to primarily be about that. It's about diversifying your ecosystem and working out what on earth we do about this new paradigm that we're in. This is also, rather ironically, going to be terrible for their IPOs. OpenAI and Anthropic are going for IPOs right now. And the US government has just absolutely demolished their international markets and said you are basically working for a domestic market right now, and a small one at that, because it's only going to be for vetted users for the most part. So their IPOs are about to get absolutely torpedoed. You shouldn't have talked so much shit, should you, Dario? Awesome. Make sure that you are subscribed to the newsletter. It's all available at aiwithkyle.com. As I said, I will be talking a bit more about local models. I'll be talking more about Chinese models in particular, and building up some resilience, some alternatives, so that we can continue to have access to life-changing artificial intelligence. So make sure you're signed up at aiwithkyle.com. Thanks.